Happy Monday and welcome to a mindful start into the week with Aneta and I, where we kind of take, little sections of self-help and healing into how we make our way better with dealing and feeling. So today we were thinking of talking about, which I actually really like. It's a trend right now. I've seen on Instagram, and Aneta just brought out a newsletter before with ways to kind of talk to yourself when you were younger. So like notes to your younger self. And I think it's just like such a lovely kind of topic to open because a lot of the time we're very hard on ourselves. And Aneta is always very great in reminding me as well that, the day you plant your seed isn't the day it grows, and such lovely kind of reminders. And I feel like when you're able to reflect on how far you've come, you're really able to notice like the power of progression and not always like the race to progress, which I think is definitely kind of like pushed on us by society. And so, when Aneta just kind of like said, let's talk about this topic, I thought to myself, oh, I'm going to have a look at my book because I wrote this when I was 21, and that's nearly like a decade ago. And even just like looking at it, I was like, wow, even at 21, I showed myself so much grace. Like, but it wasn't myself, it was like my readers, right? It's funny how like you're able to say like such wise words sometimes to people, but when it comes to then like saying them to yourself, it's like the hardest part. Do you know what I mean, Aneta?
I know exactly what you mean. I was just actually thinking about this the other day. Just like how we care for others sometimes more than we care for ourselves, whether we realize it or not. And I think that's also the point of like giving ourselves more grace and compassion. I think a lot of times, for example, like if we've done something and somebody hasn't and they're going to do something similar, we want to give them that whole roadmap, but then we have to understand, like let them figure it out and give them that grace to figure it out. And if they need help, we can come. But at the same time, it's like we need to love on ourselves the same way we love on others.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like it's also like when you give advice, you should actually listen to it yourself.
Yeah,
Like the way I speak sometimes towards like others, especially when they're going through like hard times, I'm like, oh, that actually came out really well. I wonder why I don't say that to myself when I'm going through something like that. I think it's actually way easier for us to always like help others and help ourselves. And so I think this is a really nice invite of like going on a date with your younger self. So how did you kind of feel when you wrote that before in your newsletter about dating your younger self? Like what kind of the main points that you learned from it?
I think that, well, like, it's kind of funny. Like, I was telling you earlier of how it was back then when I was younger and how it is now. But, like, yeah, like, I made myself like a cup of coffee and I went on to my younger self. But my younger self would show up 1 to 2 hours early just because I was scared of being late. Like, oh my gosh, what if there's traffic? I literally lived down the street. But I'd still show up an hour early because I wanted to be there. But now it's like showing up on time and being more mindful and not rushing things. I think that was like one of the biggest things. I would always want to rush everything and do as much as I can. But now it's like take a deep breath, think about it clearly, and now I go do those things. So I think that's like a younger self to now. How about you?
Yeah, I think I resonate with that totally. Like, although on the inside, I knew that I was kind of going against my flow by like wanting to rush things because I knew that it was from the outside, like the rat race and like, success and all of that. I was very much like always one of those people that had so many passions, like writing, yoga, and helping people in a myriad of ways. And I kind of always was like, oh, like, but how do I kind of like make them all like combine into a way where I can actually make a sustainable business out of it? And I was like, okay, I need to know now. I listened to podcasts, I read a lot. I was like, yeah, da, 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 like next step, next step, next step. And I think to my younger self, I'd just like tell them, like, although in my 20s I traveled so much and I do, like, I think that's literally the best thing ever, especially when you're younger, to travel and like, like actually know, like get to know yourself and spend a lot of time with friends and making friends. I would say like do more of that and do less of like worrying about getting there, because like there's no time pressure. Like, of course, there is in the sense of biological frame of things, especially as women. But, like, I feel like when you have, like, a rush in the back of your mind or in your heart, then you're not able to actually, like, really enjoy the essence of everyday life. Like, that pressure is always waking you up or not letting you sleep. And so I think I would tell myself, like, keep enjoying it, keep speaking to people, keep traveling and exploring and not thinking like, oh yeah, now I have to do this, now I have to do that. Like, yeah, maybe taking out the have to in my vocabulary back then would have helped.
Yeah. Really living in the present moment. I think that's like one of the most beautiful things that we can do is live in the present moment. Like this weekend, you did like a digital detox, and that was giving you the opportunity to live in the present moment. And I think that's a beautiful thing because now you're recharged for the week. How do you feel?
Yeah, way more relaxed, Aneta. Like, I feel like I'm just starting my week like really just like at peace, because I think a lot of the time on Sundays people like kind of, oh, like a new week ahead and I have so much to do. And it's not that I don't have so much to do, but I just kind of let it all come and go. Like, even during the weekend on the 3 days, like, I did obviously have times where I was like, well, I'll check my phone. And then I was like, in my head, like, kind of talking to myself, like, no, you don't need to. Like, now you're in the nature. This is where you want to be. And, kind of just like reframing what I needed in that moment makes me more like intuitive. And then it makes me then also notice how I like I'm way more disciplined with like my phone. Like it's not just about taking 3 days off, but it's also then like noticing how that goes through my daily life, if you know what I mean. Like I don't have the need to like always take out my phone and check it all the time now, because the more digital detoxes I do, the easier it is for me to stay away from my phone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I had a mini digital detox yesterday too. It was unintentional, but I was hanging out with my roommate and we were planning to like go get her nails done and then go to the coffee cafe, go work for a little bit. And I was like, okay, well, then I'll just wait until we get to the cafe to charge my phone. And we didn't even go to the cafe. Ended up exploring the city. Phone was dead all day, and quite
I
honestly,
love that.
it was just like so refreshing because otherwise I would be checking it every couple of minutes. But the fact that it had no battery, I was like, okay, great, let's just enjoy. So I think,
Perfect excuse.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that too, like, also when you're younger, like, you have more time on your hands to be with people, because have you seen that graph of like how loneliness kinds of what was it? You spend less time with less people, like the older you get. And it really made me notice when I looked at that graph that like when you're younger, like embrace like, you know, being around people as much as you can, because like you learn so much from so many people. That's why I love traveling and living in different places, because I felt like whoever I met, I learned something new from. And yeah, it kind of like always made me not question, but kind of like reflect like on who I want to be as a person, you know? And the more people you're around, the more like you also suss out who's good for me and who's bad for me. Like what my energy is like we were talking about before.
Yeah, that's like traveling and getting out of your hometown. I don't think you have to go to it in a like going to another country if you don't want to, but also just getting out of your hometown, going to a new city. If you want to another, I know you did when you were really young. How was that experience of moving to a new country when you were young?
It was the best. Like I learned so much about myself. Like I became independent like basically straight away. um because at 18 I went to be an au pair in Spain, and so like yeah, I didn't have any family or friends around, but like the family I was in was so lovely and caring. I was very blessed. And I learned how I could be on my own, for example. Um yeah, I learned so much. And I think also like channeling my energy in ways that like actually uplift me and not like depend on others to uplift me. Like that really, I really learned that a lot as well.
I think that's
Um,
a big one. Not depending on others to uplift yourself and motivate you, because
yeah,
then the responsibility is on you to do that. Because like you're figuring it all out from scratch, so the responsibility is on you.
yeah. And we need that like more than ever these days because yeah, I think we have like a codependency a lot on maybe like even people online that you don't even know, if you know what I mean. Like can be quite fatal or toxic. And the moment you learn like how to like just be on your own and like, you know, for me back then do yoga or read or write, it was like an invite to always just like come back to this peace within that I was able to kind of nurture at such a young age. And yeah, maybe that's also it, like knowing, telling my younger self like you're way stronger than you think you are. Like I think I took it a lot for granted that I was able to just like get back on my feet and be very optimistic. And you know, even my friends always tell me now like you were always the one that told us to look up and like be mindful and appreciate the little things, and I never really noticed that about myself. So actually to my younger self I would be like, you bring so much joy to so many people, right? Because I think you forget that. Like, you don't really show yourself that credit.
Yeah, it's easier to give someone else the credit than give ourselves the credit. 'Cause I think we're always so hard on ourselves, and we want to. Like I saw this quote the other day. I think I told you a few days ago, but a lot of times that when we reach a goal, we're not fully satisfied is because we keep raising the bar higher and
Yeah,
looking at the bar from a higher perspective. But we need to give ourselves this grace and compassion for what we've achieved so far. Because our younger
yeah.
self is so proud of us for what we've come to and what we've overcame and accomplished. It may not be exactly everything yet, but it's a work in progress.
I like that you say that. In fact, I think it's very key because it's so true. When you've like ticked off something on your to do list, a lot of the time it's like, okay, now what? Like, we don't actually give ourselves like the time and the space then to be like, oh, this is it. Like, you know, really like kind of nurture the fact like you've done this, it's another milestone, and really enjoy that moment rather than thinking like, oh yeah, now what, next thing, next thing, next thing. There's always like, you know, like bigger better things, which is great, it's ambitious. But me and you, for example, we're here on Substack. We only started it together last year, at the end of last year, and I love that we're already like, yeah, we want to do a summit and we want, but I also love that we always check in, like, look how far we've come. Like, we're able to just talk like this naturally together online. And, like really being able to reflect on what we've already done. I think that's so key in like your journey, no matter where you are. Because then you're always able to kind of like ground yourself in gratitude, right?
Absolutely. It's always appreciating yourself for how far you've come. Like something you were telling me earlier, like over the weekend, you had one of those tougher conversations with a loved one. And that's something to congratulate yourself for because not everybody can do that. Like looking back at my younger self, I wouldn't have a tough conversation with a partner or a family member or even a really close best friend. So like celebrate those little breakthroughs because those little breakthroughs are eventually going to lead to big breakthroughs. So I'm proud of you for that.
Yeah, that's so true. Because a lot of the time back then, I would also just like hold it in because I would be too scared to kind of open up. But ironically enough, today, soon, I have my last therapy session after 3.5 years. And I think that's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, um, thing I've learned is to speak what's on my heart and not always be so scared of the outcome or the reaction that I'm going to get, but rather just focus on what matters to me. And that's what my therapist always reminded me, like, don't always worry about what other people will think or react. Like, what matters most is like, if that's on your heart, you can't swallow it all the time, like you have to also speak up to it. So it's like you say, like, those little, yeah, things will add up. And the more you, like, I'm a big preacher of that, the more you practice something, the more you become it. So I'm now doing that myself. Like, the more I'm practicing this, like, speaking what's on my heart, the easier it will get for me in time. So yeah, I would also tell my younger self that, like, speak what's on your heart, on your mind, and it doesn't have to be arrogant. Because I think a lot of the time people say, like, oh, speak what's on your heart. It sounds quite like, you know what I mean? But you can also say it with grace and you can say it with love. Doesn't mean that you have to, like, attack so much, but speaking about yourself, taking up space for me has been very hard because I've always been the listener and I've always been the provider of advice. um, so only really in the past few years I've noticed how powerful it can be to step in my power and speak about myself, which has been uncomfortable, but also very refreshing.
Yeah. I think that's such a beautiful thing. It's like it's kind of like anything. Like if you want to learn a new hobby and you want to get good at it, you're gonna get the tools and the resources, and you want to stay consistent with it and continuously practice at it. And
Yeah,
that goes with your thinking, though. I think that if you want to think more positive and be more optimistic, it takes work, just like learning a brand new hobby or learning a new skill. It takes work to build that stamina and to build that mindset behind it. So yeah, just giving yourself grace and doing 1% better each day. It doesn't have to be from 0 to 100, but as long as you improve 1% each day, then you're gonna go so much further than somebody who does a bunch of work at once and expects results the next day. Totally.
exactly. Like, it's just being dedicated to yourself and your growth and showing up for yourself in whatever way that day may be, because your energy is not always the same every day, right? So it's like respecting that as well. Um, I'm sorry that this has already gone so quickly, but I would like to also just kind of like finish off by reading a reminder from my book, Chill Out and Cheer Up, because we were just talking about speaking to our younger selves. And ironically enough, my first chapter is pressure. And Aneta and I were saying at the beginning, it's so easy to kind of give others advice, but actually, when it comes to giving yourself advice, it's like the hardest part. And so it's funny because I think sometimes when I reread this to myself, I was like, oh, that's actually a really good idea, Grace. um, so yeah, so here's your reminder. It's okay. It's okay to feel like you're unsure of where you're going. It's okay not to know what you're doing. It's okay to feel the force of pressure placed on your shoulders, weighing you down. Where outside resources seem the only feasible way out of the infinite insecurities of life, it's okay to not be okay. Nobody is capable of being okay all the time, fluttering their wings like a fairy. We've all been there. It's only human to not feel okay. What's not okay is to give in to pressure and identify with its cunning ability to fade your essence out. It's not okay to compromise and lose control of your life due to all the pressures that push you further away from what you believe in or aim to achieve. So, next time pressure pokes at your delicate state of confusion, cure the menace with optimism and openness to the unknown, because that is the beautiful thing about life, the unknown.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so beautiful. And
Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
it's just so beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
I thought it would be quite a nice little ending to our Mindful Monday chat.
Really.
Oh, thanks, Emily. So, yeah,
I think,
thank you for joining us.
yes, thank you to everyone who's joined. We're super thankful. Sorry we did it like a little bit early today, but next week we'll be back at 9:30 Central and 4:30 CET.
Yeah, have a mindful, not only start to your week, but rest of the week, and sending you lots of love.
Yes, have a
Bye.
wonderful week. Bye, everyone.